don't shoot me. I'm only the Mellotron player. Before I do anything else, just want to show my Charlie Chuckles badge I got back in the 1950s. I was a member of the Chucklers Club. Kookaburra. Yeah, inspired by Jon BIPBOPBOOM, watching your fabulous video with your birds collection there. It just reminded me, I've got a version of one of the birds tracks here. And out of interest, I looked up the birds. What a silly name for a group. Pretty wimpy. I guess there's one good result. The American birds changed theirs to BYRDS because of the English name, so that's much sexier. But yeah, and I brought to mind the track by the Birds, No Good Without You. And I looked it up just out of interest because I really hadn't heard the original by the Birds. And then I saw it was on. Straight away, one came up instantly, and it was on the Clarion label. Now, the Clarion label was from out of Western Australia, and they usually had like second-rate Aussie cover bands from Perth, Bon Scott's territory. But they weren't, they're all right, sort of, but not great. I thought, what's the Birds, the original Birds, BIRDS, doing on Clarion? And when I played it, and then I looked again, and then I found the original Birds, the UK Birds, and that was on the label. Was it Decca or something? I forget, something like that in the UK. And I thought, how come an Australian band could get away with calling themselves the Birds and covering one of their songs? And then I read closer, and it said members of the Birds, the UK band, re-recorded that track. They must have been touring out here, or look it up. It's on YouTube somewhere. And a couple of the members decided to re-record it and release it, or just re-release. I don't know. It could just be a re-release of the original. Look it up. But if you want to. And I played it, and I went, actually, and I thought, gee, that sounds exactly like the original Birds. And then I played the original Birds. This is getting really confusing. And they both sounded pretty close. So there, wow. So if anyone ever finds the Birds on the Clarion label, that would probably be the rarest of all of them. I don't know how many cover versions were done of No Good Without You, but this is the most I ever paid for a record ever. I bought this on auction about 10 years ago. I've been looking for it for 50 years, probably more. Paid 160 Australian dollars for it. And I think if you look up Discogs, which I never do, I think you'll still find this is what it's valued at, the highest value. This one's has had a lot of play, but there's not nasty spindle marks, which is a good sign. It's had a lot of play, but it's just very fine hairline scratches. But this is my treasured copy of No Good Without You. On the very incredibly rare Australian Commotion label. Commotion was a TV show where they just mimed pop hits and things. Didn't last long. I think there are only 4 records released on the Commotion label. And 2 of them are great. I got both of the good ones. They're both cover versions, but they're extremely good cover versions. Yeah, there's no way of telling which one came out first here. Doesn't matter. Um, so that is my treasured No Good Without You. Oh, by the Vince Maloney sect. Now, Vince Maloney played in the original lineup of the Bee Gees that had all the hits with To Love Somebody, Massachusetts, the well-known hits. He was in the band for about 5 years. He used to be in Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs. Um, Great band that never really were recorded that well, but their version of Poison Ivy is the version. Anyway, Vince Maloney Sect. I think this is the best version of No Good Without You, the Birds track. They all have weak vocals. They almost sound the same. It sounds like they got like a 14-year-old kid on vocals with this really heavy guitar bass sort of backing on all three versions that I've heard. But the vocals are weak on all of them, and yeah. But this one I think is the best. This is my preferred one. You'll never find this in the wild ever. It's just so rare. It might not even be on a compilation. It could be, but super rare. But this Vince Maloney's guitar on this is savage. They're all great versions. The original's fantastic. The re-recorded or whatever version by that same band and released in Australia is fantastic. But he just takes it up a step. It's the guitar, the opening chords. He just bang! It really leaps out. This sounds so good. This is one of those 45s that sounds absolutely awesome. I bought it just for the sheer guitar sound more than anything else. And yeah, so there you go. This is the other great track single released on the Commotion label. I think the other two are females. I'm not sure, but they're not worth having. But on the beautiful Commotion label again, You Stole My Love, Mike Ferber and the Bowery Boys. Now that's a Graham Gilman track, and I believe the Yardbirds covered this. Probably a B-side on. I doubt it because I've got just about all the Yardbirds 45s. I bought them as they came out at the time. So if the Yardbirds did cover it, it would have been an album track, I think. Look, I'm old. Don't take everything I say as gospel. What I know, but sometimes if I don't know, I tend to sort of take a punt. So You Stole My Love. This is also another awesome. They're both garagey, freak beaty tracks. I don't like to use those terms, but You Stole My Love. Yeah, I call them garage. I don't know. What can you say? But I'll show them both because look at that too. You won't see this very often. Two Commotion 45s. You won't see that ever. Shouldn't think. Yeah, Mike Ferber and the Bowery Boys. Now, Mike Ferber has one of the most collectible albums ever released in this country. Not so much for the music, but excuse me. But for the album cover, it's just got one of those classic pop art album covers. Goes for an absolute bomb. Very sad story. He, a young English boy, like a lot of them, they were Brits, English or Scots mainly, that came out as 10-pound poms. Heaps of them. And Mike Ferber was one of them. And he hasn't got the greatest voice in the world, but the thing is, like the Bowery Boys, that's a Brisbane band out of Queensland, and it's a great track. It really rips along. It's terrific. Yeah, so he this is something you'll know, John. I fought the law and the law won. Bobby Fuller, he was he was murdered, as you know. Well, people don't tend not to commit suicide by drinking 10 gallons of um, fuel or petrol or gas or whatever you want to call it. He was murdered for sure, um, but it was written off as a suicide because probably the local hoods and the cops were in on it together. You know how it goes. Well, virtually the same thing happened to Mike Ferber. Um, I'd just seen him in a failed musical called Nuclear, which was sort of like a Hair type thing. I hate that shit. And we were booing them, and like we all had free tickets, and there was no paying peoples in the audience. In this beautiful old theatre that's long gone from King's Cross, and these poor people on stage, and everyone's cattle, going, get off you. And after he committed suicide, not long afterwards, and but it had nothing to do with us. But it was awful. It had no. Don't worry about it. But he apparently committed suicide. A bit like our friend in the US, Bobby Fuller. Yes. Yeah. Well, at least he was hung. He was found hanging. But the rumours are that the same. Oh, that's why. That's right. The reason why Bobby Fuller. This is the theory. Was murdered was because he was seeing what do you call it, a criminal, big time criminal's girlfriend on the side. That's why he was knocked off. The same goes for Mike Ferber. I believe it. I really do. Look, okay, he was in a failed musical, but I don't think that would have been enough to make him go and hang himself. The rumour was that he was hanging out with Mr. Biggs in King's Cross in New South Wales, Sydney, Australia. Had that, and along with the Queensland and Victorian police, were the most corrupt police and probably in the Western world at the time, and the politicians. They were all crooks, all of them. And the rumour is that he was actually having it off with the big Mr. Big's girlfriend, and he was murdered, made it look like a suicide. 12 minutes 43. So yeah, good on you, Bip. That was a very interesting video. Well done. I just thought you might be interested to hear all that. Okie dokie now. Bye.